I started this project by first cutting out a piece of oak from a plank. This piece of oak, I chose it because it had a very good looking medullary raise and fairly straight grain, so it was easy to work with. This frame saw is also the one that I made in the previous video that I recorded. I'm then cross-cutting it with another frame saw. This one has a cross-cut blade. I, for some reason, found that frame saws are more comfortable, perhaps. I feel like they cut a bit straighter than panel saws, for some reason, at least for cross-cutting. I then straightened out an edge using a hand plane. This is, I think, of the German tradition with the horn in front. They're also quite comfortable. And now this part, I had already started it before I realized that I did not record, but I then started resawing this plank into two parts. This was probably the most tedious part of the project. I had sharpened the saw beforehand, but still, it did take quite a while. It took me maybe 40 minutes or so of sawing, and then when I got to this point here, I decided to just use a chisel and split it with a mallet as well. This was my first time working with oak, or proper oak, dried oak. I have worked with green oak before, but it was quite different. For some reason, that happened, and it kind of weirded me out a bit with how it just split so suddenly. I'm used to it being more gradual, like an ash or a pine. Same here. And then also flattened out the edge of the smaller parts for it as well. It's made... Sorry. The shelf that I made was out of 5 main parts, and here I'm making 4 of them right now. This is the same process for all 5, though for 4. That's how it went. I flattened it out with 2 hand planes. The jointer plane was used mostly because it has a very tight mouth and it left a very smooth surface, unlike my jack plane. And then the neighbor's cat just walks in through my door. He sometimes does that, which is quite adorable, but I was worrying a bit that he would get cut by a tool or something, but everything was fine. He was quite nice to have there. I had forgotten to record the part where I shaped out those curves that you see on the shelf, but it wasn't anything. It was really just making a couple of straight cuts with my saws, with a saw, and then using a rasp and file to shape it out a bit more. And here I'm mortising out the holes for the tenons to go into from the shelf into the side parts. I've never really understood why mortising is so intimidating, because it's really quite simple. You just have to follow the lines that you marked, make sure that you don't cut at your baseline too early, and just go downwards and make sure that the chisel is going straight enough. Especially on thin stock, it goes really quickly. The mortising chisel I have here, it's somehow older than the house that I'm in, which is quite interesting to me, to use a tool that's that old. And even if I got it for really cheap, it's still quite important to me that it has a lot of history and I'm continuing it in some way. The mallet that I'm using, you might be able to see that the handle is held to the head with a peg. It's not a very good joint. The head is quite wobbly as well. It's held up alright, but I will be making a new mallet soon enough. Probably out of some beech or maple firewood. But I have to get that first. And here I'm basically just cleaning out the edges of the mortise with a chisel. I should have been doing that with a paring chisel, I think, but the mortising chisel could do that as well. And here I am cutting out the tenons. I'm sorry if my left hand obstructs the view, but I'm using a little tenon saw by Frost of Norwich. I don't know when it was made, but it's a pretty old tool that I restored. And here my hand is locking it again. I don't really use any guidelines for it, except for at the top, at the end green, so that I know where to saw, but for like going downwards I didn't put any lines because I'd be paring down the chisel to make sure that everything was straight afterwards. And with a finely sharpened saw, this process goes by pretty quickly. And here, even though it's sharpened for rib cutting, it cross-cuts fine. Especially with really small teeth, it can get the work done. The middle part, I then used a very thin chisel. I'm pretty sure it's maybe 4 millimeters thick. That would be about 1/8 of an inch wide. And here I am removing that waste. This tool, I'll be honest, I'm not really sure what it was used for originally. I find it quite strange because it has the profile of a mortising chisel, but it's too thin to make any practical mortises, perhaps. Though for fine work like this, I have found it quite useful for paring and also for some other tasks that you'll see. I do also want to mention that I only really filmed like the second or after, not the first time that I did joints. So if you see some joints already made, that's because I didn't film it. I didn't film all of them. Only filmed the ones after I got a bit of practice. And here I'm paring down the cheeks of the tenons and also the mortises until I get quite a good fit, I'd say. A bit like this one. And then I use I put a few mallet taps, I'm pretty sure, or no. Yep. And now here I'm cutting out a dado where the mortises are to kind of hide the sloppiness of my tenons, especially the cheeks. The dado is not too deep. I think it was maybe 2 millimeters or so. It more or less hides all of the gaps. Although here I had to make sure that I didn't make it too wide, or else there would be it would have probably turned out worse than if I were to have a few gaps between the tenons than a very gappy dado joint. It doesn't do anything structurally. I think it might have done, for the function of it, I think it might have actually been worse to do it, although it didn't change it too much, so everything turned out fine in the end. I'm using that very thin chisel again to pare out the waste. And still, I'm using that white chisel to chop down a bit more until I get the depth that I wanted. The chisel I'm using here, I'm pretty sure this is a 32 millimeter wide chisel. I've always found it quite useful to have a very wide chisel that I can use for tasks like these, and for detail work like adding chamfers. And here, as you can see, it really does help hide the sloppiness of my tenons there. and any gap is gone. And in the end, although when all of it came together, like here and here, oh yeah, here I'm adding the back. And in the end, although the joints didn't turn out perfect, the dado really did help. So for the back here, I'm using the fifth piece, and I'm here splitting it to width, or about the correct width. And then, although it's not shown on camera, I did shape it a bit more because one of the things that we were going to store in the shelf could not fit, so I shaped it a bit more there. We'll see in just a bit. And here I'm cutting out the tenon for the back. And that little saw again. It wasn't a double tenon like in the other ones. It was just a very simple one. And then I cut a mortise just like the way that I did the tenons. Here I'm trying out a different angle. I'm still learning a lot. This project was my first time doing a lot of things, like resawing, and I learned quite a bit from this project. And I'm still trying out different techniques with, especially with cutting out cheeks of tenons. I want to make a couple of bench hooks. However, I don't want to make them too rushed, but I also don't want to spend too much time on them, so I'm trying to figure out a compromise. Then here, I cut out the mortise for that to go into. I did that on both sides as well. After that, I assembled the thing, and the back, the reason why I put a back on it is not only to add a bit more of structural support, but also so that there can be a surface to go against the wall, to put nails through it. So there I glued a piece of oak on the back as well, where 2 nails could go through and connect to the wall. Here I'm using a little egg beater drill with a nail at the tip to make 2 holes for the nails to go in through later. I wouldn't trust oak for putting nails in through on their own like that, because I feel like oak splits very easily. So doing it, so putting the 2 holes there did help ensure that I wouldn't have any issue like that. Now let's put a hole there. I didn't really mark out the holes, I just eyeballed where they should go. And here I'm using raw linseed oil for the finish. It's a very simple finish, very easy to put on as well. Like I just put some in my hand and then just rubbed it over the wood. And I feel like linseed oil is a very good finish for wood because it doesn't change the essence of the color. It really just enhances it and pops out the grain a bit more. And also creates a bit more contrast between the end grain and the face grain. Here are a few photos of it hanged on the wall. I think it turned out great. It's probably one of the best things I've made so far out of wood. And thank you for watching. Oh yeah, and it's used to store a couple of vitamins. Thank you for watching.